Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest installment of the JPMorgan Chase Rutgers Alumni Community event featuring a very dynamic leadership group from the Center for Market Advantage housed in the Rutgers Business School. My name is John Borghese. I am the Director of Alumni Workplace Engagement within the Rutgers University Alumni Association and the Rutgers University Foundation. I do just have a simple request before I turn it over to our subject matter experts. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to accommodate as many of them as possible. However, I'll throw this caveat out at you. If there is a question that is relative to the topic being spoken about at that particular time, we'll get to it as rapidly as we possibly can to keep the flow of the conversation going. And that's what we are encouraging. We encourage participation, we encourage dialogue, we encourage a free-flowing conversation. So at this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Eric Tancre from the Center for Market Advantage. Eric, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let me share my screen and we'll set the presentation and we'll get started. Okay. I want to welcome everybody to our presentation. We're going to be talking about AI lessons from the field. And we're going to start with some introductions before we actually get into the meat of our presentation this morning. Okay, so first of all, we are Center for Marketing Advantage. We are the ones hosting the event today, along with University Events. So pleasure to be with you, as we stated before. So what is the Center for Market Advantage? We are a go-to hub to gain market advantage. So we co-create, we co-facilitate with business leaders, small, medium-sized, large organizations, governmental entities, non-governmental entities, nonprofit, profit organizations, and we're in the business of providing or helping you gain or obtain sustainable, we call market advantage, which many of you would also equate it to as competitive advantage. The key word in that is sustainable market advantage. And as a center, we also provide interdisciplinary knowledge generation and dissemination. So we again provide ourselves as a hub to provide this kind of co-creation, facilitating this kind of great work we bring to you today. So the initiatives we cover, we foster academic research. We have access to top-notch thinkers. We just had, just to share with you, we just had recently a panel where we were looking at the Digital Summit and also practical AI, how do you apply AI in organizations? We just had that earlier this year. A lot of great feedback from industry representatives. And that's just one example of that. We also engage what we call dissemination of knowledge through workshops, through some symposiums and conference based on state-of-the-art knowledge. And example of that, we had recently, we had a digital sales summit where we were talking about the innovations in digital marketing and how that was going to impact not only B2B models, but also B2C models as well. We had seminars with, we have seminars with world-class thinkers, and that would include, recently we had a seminar which had the guest Joe Cohn, who is a Watson Fellow at IBM. And we also have publications, one including the Rutgers Business Review, and many other things that we do that to address some of the innovations that we're advancing to help, again, businesses both small, medium, and large. And at this time, I want to introduce Shen Yenier, the Director of Center Marketing Advantage, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Eric. Keep the slides up, please. So, yeah, I'm the Director of the Market Advantage, Center for Market Advantage. That was established quite a few years back now. And at the same time, I'm the chair of the marketing department at Rutgers Business School and full professor, tenured full professor. And just as Eric was saying, the center works with the government entities, with organizations, with companies to try to figure out new solutions that can help everybody, basically. And then we publish our results, and we have events and so forth. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm going to be very, very brief. But one of the initiatives that we have within the center is digital innovations and artificial intelligence, business analytics type topics, which now are trending basically. And Nagaraj used to be with us as an executive in residence for quite a few years. He used to be and still is, although he officially left us at the beginning of the month to join the University of New Hampshire. And now he's the director there of Center for Business Analytics. Nagaraj is proud, I think, we are proud definitely to have him as a Rutgers MBA alum. And now he will be leading the Center for Business Analytics at the University of New Hampshire and continue our work as partnership. And this will be, I guess, technically the first joint partnered event that we host. And we'll have more to come soon to be announced. But we do have partnerships with other universities in the region or across the nation, even internationally. So we do a lot of things. Eric, can you show the next slide, please? The last thing that I want to tell you is where you can find additional information about us. So rbscma.org is the center website where we have all these events announced and synopsis of things that we did in the past, some research that is published and so forth. So you can always access us there. It's pretty straightforward. And one thing that I have to plug as another title that I have, which is editor-in-chief of Rutgers Business Review. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk to executives and alumni, I have to remind them because the Rutgers Business Review now it's 6 years old too. And we are readily available on rutgersbusinessreview.org or ourbusinessreview.org, or the easiest way to find us is just Google Rutgers Business Review. And all the papers, articles are available for download for free from anywhere in the world. All you need is just an internet connection. And with that, I'm going to pass the ball to Nagaraj, who probably wants to start his own presentation sharing, I'm guessing. So Eric, can you please stop presenting? So Nagaraj can take over, yes. So Nagaraj, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shane. Give me a second while I share the screen. Okay, this is 1 second. Sorry for this. Can you see my screen? Okay, this is where we start.
Make sure that you enable the voice and
Exactly.
video.
That's the reason I had to go back and reshare the screen.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of media embedded. But now we can see it now. Go.
You can see the screen? Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Hello, everyone. My name is Nagaraj Bukapatnam. As Shane said, I am a Rutgers alumnus, and currently I lead the Center for Business Analytics at University of New Hampshire. We are focused on seamless collaboration between academia and industry, and we are very happy to engage with various institutions, individuals, and corporations, and we do some exciting work. Happy to share more details in the future. So before we deep dive into AI, we wanted to show a little, I want to say a little dated video of Google Analytics, and then we will take it from there. 1 second. Please let me know if you can't hear.
Hello, just after semi-skimmed milk.
Your search for semi-skimmed milk returned 0 results.
We don't sell milk.
Your search for milk returned 52,256 results. Your top hit, milk of magnesia.
No,
Milk floats of yesteryear.
no,
This milk-themed family wall planner.
no. Sorry, I'm just looking for normal milk.
Couldn't find what you were looking for.
That's what I'm saying. I couldn't find it, so I'm asking you if you could.
Advanced search.
All right, let's do this. Keyword, now, go.
Yeah, okay. Milk.
Please narrow your search by using one of the following filters. Kayaks, packet 12, self-cleaning, breakfast and condiment.
That one. Breakfast.
One result.
Milk, skimmed semi.
Semi-skim milk. That's what I first asked you for.
It's milk skimmed semi.
I'm very positive that many of you are thinking, I was there. The other day, Shane was saying he was there like last couple of days back when he was trying to search for something. This is the challenge faced by many individuals, institutions, or even machines. The biggest question is nowadays, how do you define the problem? Then comes, how do I find the data, the tools, and the technology that will be there to solve the problem? And the new paradigm the companies are dealing with is how long my solution is going to be relevant. We at the academia observed that what used to be a clear delta between tactical and strategic thinking has shrunk significantly, especially with the advent of AI. When I last Googled AI, Google like what is AI, it came back with roughly 3,330,000,000 results. If someone is curious like me, I went back and said, do we even have so many websites? And the answer is no. There are around 1.7 billion websites and 3 billion search results. So you can imagine when you talk about AI, it comes in different shapes, sizes, forms. Artificial AI is like artificial intelligence for many. It's applied intelligence for someone, and it's actionable intelligence. So everything grouped together is a big deal. To define what AI is, I went back and looked at one of my favorite authors, Clay Christensen. He wrote many books that include Innovator's Dilemma and Disruptive Innovation, amongst others. He talks about AI in a very interesting perspective that I've depicted here. He says AI can be classified into two categories here, but there is a third category called action, which we will talk about in the future. When you talk about, let's look at each of this, like the perception and cognition. Perception, as the name suggests, talks about our five senses and what we are capable of doing in terms of sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. This is focused on how the machine can perform basic tasks, such as identifying an object or a sound, and to take an action based on it. I mentioned a couple of products and technologies that are enabling this. Of course, we'll talk about the bottom row very soon, but here I mentioned AWS Recognition for the image processing and Azure Audio for audio processing. On the other side of the spectrum, we have cognition, a little more intricate and involved solution. Natural language processing is a very good example. Understanding what a person is saying or what a system is generating is only like one part of the solution. Like to understand the context and the situation behind it is a challenge. For example, if someone says, hey, I want to sell Amazon stock when it is 10 times my purchase value, the system should be able to comprehend that Amazon is not a forest, but it's a stock that is traded on NASDAQ and should compare the price with the original price and perform a specific action.
Nog, this is John. We have a question that I think is relevant. You had mentioned the name of the author of, and can you just repeat the name of the author so I can then put that into the chat box for everyone to see?
Sure. The name of the author is Clayton Christensen, ClaytonChristesen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we are talking about Amazon. So for us, it looks like a very straightforward statement, right? For the mission to comprehend, it is a little more involved. On the same note, the one paradigm shift in the way the data is being stored and used for decision making is on the customer engagement platforms. the process of the decision making has gone beyond a click or a simple explicit data that is available there. Now it includes many habits of the customer. That includes social media, demographic, psychographic, financial, to determine some very basic questions as, is it worth having this person as a customer? Or how can we upsell, cross-sell something? Even though I mentioned a couple of logos that enable these kind of solutions, which provide like unlimited data, computation power, and churn out near real-time decision-making capabilities, while taking care of all the basic elements such as compliance, security, so on and so forth. Why AI? I want to give a brief synopsis of what happened. Like, I was talking with one of my very good friends, Paul, who heads the North America sales for a big technology company. I said, Paul, I see that all the products that you used to sell now are AI enabled. I'm like, it's very fascinating. Paul says they haven't done much. They have, if he says, if we don't use the word AI, nobody will pick up his phone. I said, that's very interesting. And that's true for many industries nowadays. Jokes apart, that is the reality. Unlike the previous technologies, the influence of AI is more implicit than explicit. We all, when we did Google, we are influenced by AI. When we talk with Alexa, we invoke Siri, we are already influenced by AI. It's a matter of companies adopting that and explicitly taking or making use of it. During our journey and during our work with many organizations, to understand how they are using AI and what kind of problems they are solving, we categorized into these 5. Of course, it also there's a lot that depends on how the organizations are adopting this technology. Are they at the functional level, business level, or the corporate level? So that's going to be an interesting conversation for future. The biggest influence we have seen in terms of using is for augmenting decision making. It's about increasing the objectivity, enhancing the outcome that was not done previously. Everyone heard about IBM Watson and how it could identify and prescribe medications. In some cases, has performed better than physicians or health professionals. This is not because it knew more or it did, or the physicians knew less. It just connected the data better. So as the number of data points increase, as the systems generate more data, the ability of machines to bring all of this thing together and come up with a solution that makes sense is going to be valuable. Hyper customization. We all have experienced Siri, Alexas of the world. Many a times, for example, if somebody says, hey, I want to discuss, you have your iPhone with you, and you say to somebody saying, I don't know whether to get Chase Platinum or Chase other card. I'm sure next time your news items on your Apple News feed will start featuring those articles. How is it happening? They are constantly in the listening mode and implicitly trying to cater to the needs of individuals and understand their preferences. If you watched Great Hack on Netflix, Facebook's ability to classify or identify 5,000 data points per person to determine which group will influence a particular outcome is fascinating. I will bet in few years from now, for the same web, video, audio content, you will see different images, ads, and other nuanced elements based on your preferences. I remember like few years ago, Samsung gave a very good news article which said, don't talk too much near your TV because they are listening and in the future they will use the data. I was in Hong Kong a couple of years back. I met a company that was able to generate or suggest images and content based on what you're writing. When it comes to lead generation, this is another fascinating area that has really been influenced. If every company has one challenge, customers. Every company needs customers. So how do you identify them? How do you cater to their needs? How do you engage with them? How do you have the lifetime value that you want to derive from them? These are all the basic questions. A simple channel attribution in terms of identifying which channel the customer is coming through so that they can create the content and make the experience relevant is itself a big challenge nowadays. Operational excellence. I'll talk about the path of AI, but definitely want to mention that when you talk about operationalizing or enhancing the operations of your business, it's not about either or. There are many cases where it's a combination of automation and AI. One of my favorite examples and one of the classic use cases is your call centers. One solution that we built for a company talks about how the call, when received by an agent, is handled through different means. So the solution entailed listening to the conversation in real time, transcribing the audio, updating the CRM systems instead of agent trying to constantly type in and do the magic there, in monitoring the sentiment and emotion of the caller so that they can check out what we call as the conversation path, right? Instead of constantly putting knowledge-based questions or knowledge-based articles on the screen, it's trying to say, hey, look, ask this question. Sometimes they're more nuanced, sometimes more personal. It's not all about, hey, did you ask this question? Did you sell this product? Or did you ask about, or did you talk about this service? No. So the combination of automating the workflow plus able to enhance by the use of AI is something that we have seen. Data transformation. Everybody talks about data. Every company is generating data. Every system is able to churn out so much data and say so many forms and shapes and sizes. What data is relevant? How do we store? What do we keep? How long do we keep? There are many questions AI can answer. We analyze the companies that have been using data in many shapes and forms, and how they were approaching decision making, I may say. Data is classified through many criteria. Here we looked at very in a simple format. Is it explicit or implicit? Explicit data or knowledge is primarily of what is being easily generated, articulated, communicated, recorded, all those things. Your data sheets, white papers, everything is explicit data. The practical application of explicit data is implicit data. How I say thank you, right? It determines how you answer that response, how you give a response, right? For example, if I am very angry, so thank you, right? You all automatically know that I am not very happy. Even though thank you is a positive statement, you are going to differ your answer, or you will have a nuanced response to my thank you. So able to understand that is the implicit portion. Of course, the third portion is the tacit knowledge. Right now, we are like super focused and we are excited to talk about some of the things that we are trying to do. And tacit knowledge in one shape or form is the reason why we think that humans are not going anywhere and AI is not going to take over anything. Here we have divided into, and what type of actions are companies taking, right? So some of them are reactive and some of them are proactive. Let's look at something simple like customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction in many a times is after the fact. Typically, you send out a service or you ask a question, right? It's a reactive mode. Channel attribution, able to identify which channel the customer wants, and then proactively able to generate the content that is going to be used there is a proactive and explicit. Problem escalation. Here we have seen both sides. There are times, one of the simple examples is in the call center. There are times when you call and say, hey, I want to talk to the supervisor. Or there are times the system is proactively listening and saying, the conversation is going in a negative way. Let's get a supervisor, right? So that's being used. Fraud detection compliance, same thing. There are many times when you, like again, I'll go back to the call center, because are the agents revealing or giving the details that are supposed to be given? And now this compliance and all these things are being applied to physical documents. Last few years gave us some unique insights into how business and technology adoption is happening. Many companies start with automation, and we are looking at the technology portion. So once they get into the automation mode, you can see that number of resources required over time will reduce. As the system gets AI enabled, they are going to start realizing the operational efficiencies. Now, in the future, they will become machine learning driven, a little more of involved approach. So then you'll need some specific resources, some expertise, some new technologies. Once they get into the deep learning mode, you require almost the same number of resources, but with different skill set. Same thing when we looked at the revenue, right? Same thing is happening. So as the companies automate, like as a technology company, when you start adopting, when your business or your clients start adopting, you will see a decrease in the revenue because they're AI enabled, right? But as the systems get complex, you will need more resources, more technologies, and we see an increase in the revenue or the cost from the other side. This is my favorite question. Data is blank, right? My favorite answer is oil, right? And people talk data is king. But what we have seen is data is a pawn, right? Like the way they say the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, power of data lies in the hands of the presenter. How you slice and dice the data, how do you create the visualizations, and how do you tell a story and narrative based on the data is up to you, right? Many a times I have seen companies representing the same data to different stakeholders so that the net outcome is positive. And everybody says, data is now pawn, I want data to be all powerful. And what drives that? We think AI will do. Because the more data you feed to the AI, there is only so much you can trick. You fit in that, you give the data that is not relevant, and you will get an output that is totally irrelevant. Before we go further, we put together a small experiment here. We will play a 1-minute clip of Invitation Homes earnings call. This is by Dallas Turner. It happened very recently. We would like you all to listen. Following this, Lindsay or Stephanie will conduct a poll, answer some of the questions, and see how you compare against the AI that we have used to mine the same 1-minute call. Some of the things that you have to pay attention to in terms of the concepts, the keywords, or the sentiment of the call. So without much ado, let me play the call.
Finally, I'd like to wrap up with some thoughts on sustainability. We're continuously taking the steps necessary to be a responsible steward who encourages discussion, innovation, and action amongst our peers, associates, in the industry. Earlier this month, we announced our investment in Fifth Wall's Climate Tech Fund, which is seeking solutions to reduce carbon emissions from the construction, ownership, and operation of real estate. In addition to investing in future solutions, we continue to roll out initiatives that help limit the company's carbon footprint and the environmental impact of our homes. These include our smart home technology that help residents manage their homes and save up to 15% on their energy bills, and our air filter home delivery program that provide better air quality and improve HVAC efficiency. Looking forward, we're focused on identifying new opportunities
So we have the poll up. I can see it on my end.
Yes, I can see it. I cannot see the responses though, but
No, I think they have to vote first. So we're asking for you to vote whether or not this topic covers, the topics covered are environmental impact, innovation, or both.
And we'll give it a few more seconds for participants to answer.
sure, thank you. 75% said innovation, environmental impact, and 70% said innovation. Let's see what the systems came out. So we processed the same 1-minute recording using IBM Watson and just used out-of-box solution. So let's see what the results say. So environmental impact, they say it's 70% relevant and 51% relevance is attributed to innovation. So here, I think the audience are very close to this. That's amazing. So when you look at the keyword extraction, right, it is in this particular case, IBM uses machine learning and natural language processing to break down the language. I don't want to go too technical, but I want to definitely mention. There are something called as a core models, like this natural language processing, or any system requires some kind of a training. So IBM uses DB Media to process all their natural language systems, and Google uses Wikipedia. So that's the reason Google's, what should I say, like the base model is much more robust and much more larger. And I'll just go a little tangent. So keyword detection, classifications, concepts, emotions, and semantic role, relations, entities. There are so many things the systems generate. What we are showing is like only like a tip of an iceberg. How the data is being processed is also changing. In the good old days, it was like simple Bayesian algorithms trying to find out the relation of the words amongst each other. Nowadays, they are using context. I think the classic example is if you have used Google, if you had observed Google before and after September of 2019, the number of search results and the relevance of the search results increased like tremendously, because their new engine, it's called the BERT, was introduced, and they focus on the context. And they say that sometimes the words that were called like the stopgap words, suppose like I want to travel from New York to Boston, right? The two word was almost like irrelevant 10 years ago, but that two word is very relevant now, right? So how do you use the simple like stop words and make relevance of the situation is something that they are experimenting. I myself have used BERT extensively. My areas of interest, apart from natural language generation, natural language processing and understanding, is natural language generation. How do you generate sentences or words without even like explicitly training? So that's one of the areas of interest that I do research on. So I use BERT extensively, and it was fascinating. All right, you want to go ahead with the next question, Lindsay?
We'll give it a few more seconds.
%65% investment and 53% sustainability. Okay. That's one. So here the system contradicts with humans here. It says like 93% is more about sustainability and 64% is about investment, because there are a lot of other terms that are close to sustainability. So the last poll. Go ahead, let's.
Like the next poll is like slide 17, I think. We have a few slides.
We have a few slides? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So one of the things we want to mention was in terms of the sentiment of the overall the conversation, if I may say. So it talks about like it looks at each. There are like 12 or 13 keywords that get generated by that were generated by the system, and they said overall the sentiment is very positive. It also generates emotion and so on and so forth. We'll talk about it. So every keyword that gets detected will have an emotion attached to it. So it's in this particular case, we are showing you one example where we say like, hey, what is the emotion associated with the keyword environmental impact? So it says like, so joy, fear, disgust, anger, sadness. So there are 8 emotions the Watson can come up with. I'll go a little bit tangent. The systems are very, when you talk about conversation, the previous challenges in terms of identifying the speaker, ensuring that the transcription is correct, so on and so forth. There is a lot of work that is being done. The current systems can support up to 6 different speakers. So if there are like 6 people talking on the call, it can clearly identify who the 6 speakers independently. For each of the 6 speakers, as the conversation goes on, it can identify the sentiment and emotion of the conversation. So some of the very interesting work we have done is during the conversation, how do we track the flow of the conversation? Sometimes it can start with this sadness and end with anger and so on and so forth. I'll give you a very simple, one simple example. When we try to, for a healthcare company, when we try to run this sentiment and emotion analysis for a set of calls, what we saw before, like say we mined the conversations from say November to March. What we found out was before November, between November and December, all the calls were mostly like sad, because I think this was primarily supporting some kind of a device, and the conversations was more about like pleading. But from January 1st to the say March, all the conversation, same context, same reason, but the primary emotion was anger. So then we were able to come up with some kind of a model which says, look, based on these emotions, how can you tie an emotion to an outcome? How can you mitigate the negative effect? And how do you identify the right person who can handle the right call to keep the emotion checked? So it's not like you call and everything is gung-ho, right? Like, but outcomes can be varied through a nuanced approach. So that is, we have used Watson. If you use Microsoft, they have done a lot of work in terms of supporting multiple languages. So able to, agents or like any conversation, we were able to support like multiple callers, multiple languages. The same thing applies to video, which we'll talk about very shortly, some of the use cases there. Okay, this is the poll, right? Like you have to go?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to show anything.
And we'll give it a few more seconds.
Sure. Joy, 75%, anger, 31%. Okay. So you're right on mark. This is overall joy and anger. So now that we have extracted the sentiment, emotion of a call, so myself and Professors Shane and Eric, we have done some experimentation. Like, so what does it mean? Like, oh, it's all great. Now we got like access to the data, right? But it would have been explicit otherwise. How does it matter, right? Like at the end of the day, it has to tie into some business objectives, whether it's the stock price, whether it is like the profitability and all that, so on and so forth. So we put a little comparison. So what happened after the earnings call? So overall, the call was joy, talks about ESG, like the sustainability, all the right keywords in this day and age. So what happened to the stock? So it unfortunately took the same route of as S&P and the stock. So some of the lessons here. So thank you so much for participating in the poll. We will move on to the next one. So what Propels AI? Many companies ask, are we ready for AI? Now the technology is democratized. Are we ready for that? The answer is yes, right? If you have data, if you know where the data is, you can start. If you don't have the data, that is fine. You're already being influenced by AI. Better adopt it. Right? So as there is a tremendous laser focus on creating data points through many means, this will go on. This is going to be. You'll see more and more data getting generated, more and more AI systems doing a better job. And technology evolution. AWS, Azure of the world will enable AI with a click of a button. And there is a lot of push in terms of making no-code based systems. They said if you have an idea, you adopt a technology and ensure, and you are not sitting there and coding away. Knowledge convergence. I think this is one thing that I have observed, even when I talk to professors here and Rutgers, where all these disciplines are coming together. They have done extraordinary research, understood the nuances of each of the disciplines. All these things are coming together. So when you feed the right data, right information, right source, and right perspective, you can see that the systems perform better. One classic example, this is my favorite example I give. When we were talking to a luxury goods expert, when we were trying to, they were trying to do a price estimation. So in the typical luxury goods, don't take the demand supply approach. Right? So it has more nuanced factors. So what are those nuanced factors? So he was talking about how the currency rate has an influence over the luxury goods. So how the market shifts across the globe. So what used to be sold today in US can be sold in Europe tomorrow and in Asia on day 3, because the currency variation has so much influence. So this kind of domain expertise with technology and expertise is what is going to keep this relevant. When you talk about open source, I'm making it like a little more, what should I say, generic. Open source in terms of the tools, technology, data, and more importantly, intelligence. So as you can see, there is so much information that has been generated, whether it is in terms of data, voice, or images, videos. So many things are coming out there. Many systems are able to use those to get off the ground. Hardware has become more customized. Now, no longer Intel supplies the chips of the world, right? Like AMD doesn't manufacture every chip out there. So Google started their own one. Last month I was talking to an expert on hardware from Intel. He said Apple is ahead of the game because they have used AI to really identify what are the primary functions. So when you build a device or when you build a service, it's no longer about I have this latest and greatest capacity and competency and use it, right? It's about how do I create a device which is very efficient, which is very customized to my majority of users. And that application nowadays you see even Verizon came back and said, look, they are using AI to propagate the 5G, right? So they are trying to, there are many nuanced approaches to it.
So Nag, I have a question pertaining to the hardware acceleration and the technology, where it's leading. Will there ever be a time where we look at our screen or look at our phone and it'll read what we're thinking as opposed to what we're saying? Will that day ever come?
That's a great question. Okay. Two things. I met a professor from University of South Florida. He was doing some pioneering work in that area. And he was able to determine what, he had, of course, he was using electrodes, but he was able to sort of map our thinking. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not, but it is going to happen in the future. Absolutely. On the same note, I have been, I think I met a professor Shane introduced me to a professor a few years back, and he was doing a similar work. Instead of explicit mouse actions, he wanted to navigate using the movement of the eye and the thought. So have I seen examples of this? Yes. Is it going to happen soon? I think yes.
It's kind of interesting because, you know, with the pandemic, you walk into certain buildings now and have to get your facial scan, to get your temperature taken, to make sure that you're healthy enough to enter into a building. Is this the type of technology that we're talking about that's being piggybacked on, or how's the technology being developed?
This is a little different. So what you are seeing in terms of the scanners, those are like regular, like I want to use like external devices and machines. But the technology that that I have seen or have experienced is more nuanced. Okay? For example, like when you talk about eye movement, right? Like, okay, let me step back. I think I have. What you're talking about, let's take, if you look at COVID, right? There are two different areas of interest I have seen. One is able to look at the skin and identify the symptom. Okay, so it's not like you have to explicitly do something. You walk through, the machine scans the skin and able to, like, it has its algorithm built in and says, hey, you have COVID or not. I have seen systems using voice, able to talk to a system, talk to a machine, and it will detect whether you have COVID or not. You don't have to do like exclusive swab or anything like that. So if you start looking at that nuanced way of accessing, yes, you are looking at that. But it is much more, can you, like the way, I don't want to go into the yogic practice way, but I'm going to say able to communicate with machines through thought it's somewhere in between. I don't want to say it is too long or too short, but it's somewhere in between, that there are so many companies, so many researchers who are working on this.
Well, let me interject, because we have the slide up. So I think the next step has to be facial recognition and mimics and so forth, right? So yeah, I think that's right now the challenge, like short-term challenge. Because brain wave activity and so forth, it's a little bit more complicated. As far as I know, from what I've seen, and Nag knows better, the machines that you need to scan your brain are still relatively clumsy and big and so forth, and very expensive. So they're working on making them smaller. And I'm sure now there's like cheap alternatives or smaller machines that we can use. But there's a technical challenge in terms of scanning the inside of the brain, as far as I know.
Absolutely. I hope we answered the question.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Got me a little bit scared, but you got to me. So. I thought the only technology could read my mind was my wife's ability to read my mind, but that's a good thing.
Beyond that, yes.
Yes.
So there are very interesting, like especially the one I saw. I physically went and met the professor, so I saw that system working first time, and it's like fascinating. So I'm thinking that it has already gone to the next level. This I'm talking like 2 years ago. So at this point, right, like we are looking at when you talk about AI, all the systems and augmenting your decision making, whether it's your individual or institutional competency. One principle that I always talk about is given by Professor Maharabian. It's called the Maharabian Principle. He was a professor of psychology, Stanford, and in his book called Silent Messages in 1971, he came up with this rule. The rule states that 7% of for an effective communication, the rule 7% is communicated through spoken word, 38% through the tone of voice, and 55% through the body language. So when you want to find what is happening, like you need to look at very implicit and explicit actions to come up with a proper conclusion. So companies are spending millions, if not billions, to be future relevant, adopting technologies to understand their current and potential customers, solving complex business problems through objective data-driven initiatives, and we are excited to be part of this journey. This has been a very small attempt to share some of our experiences, and here we focused on natural language processing. We have done, as I mentioned, some interesting work on image, video processing, and deep neural networks, ranging from price estimation to brand affinity. And we hope you enjoyed this presentation, and we wish to share more in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nag. Thank you, Shen and Eric. Let me just see here. We have a question that came in. Nag, you talked about saying thank you in a different manner, and then talked about emotion detection with AI. Do firms increasingly use AI emotion detection and the 73855 rule to understand customers and increase the efficiency of their employees, or related implementations have not yet been applied?
Not much. Let me be very honest with that. The focus is not, they're not able to, they haven't applied that. So I'll give you a journey. Like earlier, the focus was on what they call as a speech analytics. So what would happen is everything that is spoken was translated into text, and the text was mined to understand what the customer was saying. However, it missed a critical component, which is the emotion, right? When you transcribe, it says thank you. It doesn't tell you how the thank you was stored. Fast forward, 2016 is when IBM first introduced, or I worked on IBM's Watson's first time, and it was able to natively analyze the voice. So anytime the customer was angry, the customer had hesitation, it would explicitly tag saying that the customer's emotion. Are the companies increasing? There's a slight increase, but they haven't really adopted at the pace we expected to. There's more focus on the call center, so call center side to enhance those interactions and have a better knowledge base to support. But within the organization, I haven't seen one good use case, or one thing I can remember is in 2019, I think there was an airport in North Carolina that asked me if they can install some of these devices, like the Alexas of the world, in the corners, and hear out the conversation so that they can know what the passenger experiences were, instead of explicitly asking. Because surveys, if not dead, they're almost like dead, right? Nobody takes that effort. So how do you understand your customer in the environment they are without? So we are seeing a different approach to how the customers are interacting, and incorporation of these systems in a different. But in terms of adoption, we are far away from it, where it should.
We have one more question here, and I guess this could be addressed to all three of you here, and another plug for your center. So what are some resources that the audience can use to get some hands-on skills to further their knowledge?
I'll let Shane take the first shot, and I'll answer.
So I'm going to type the center address here. RPSCMA.org. Send it to everyone. So there we have videos that we worked on over time with webinars and so forth. Several of our past webinars have been recorded, and we added sample videos, but actually on YouTube there is quite a few more that are on the Rutgers Business School YouTube channel that we have, that include specifically to AI, digital transformation, and so forth. You can address any of us questions directly by email, and we definitely will answer those. So we are pretty easy to find. I'm Yenio at business.rutgers.edu. Nag, would you want to share your email? Yeah.
Yep. Mine is first name dot last name at unh.edu. Rutgers CMA and UNH Center for Business Analytics, we collaborate. We both have some very unique resources and competencies, and we come together to solve some very interesting problems. So we are more than happy to engage with you all to
for this. Sorry, Eric, go on.
That's all right. And I can be reached at eToncre, ETONCRE at business.rutgers.edu.
Nag, do you have any books, suggestions, and so forth? I think that is kind of like the implicit question.
I will share that. I have like a ton of books I can talk or think about.
So just for our audience who is here, if you could send me that list, and then I could forward that list over to our audience today in an email. So you'll get that complete list. You'll get everyone's contact information should you have any questions, and you'll get the rbscma.org website as well. I'll make sure that everyone gets that.
Sure. For this year, I had like around 40 books I read this year. At least 30 of them are AI. So I'll be more than happy to share some of them. That's what I'm going to list. Okay. I'll share some.
Well, I'd like to thank Eric and Shen and Nag for just a wonderful presentation. I mean, for someone like myself who is not just takes technology for granted, self-admittedly is at the latter end of the baby boomer era, that technology really didn't play a part in my growing up that much. But this was enlightening, super enlightening on what's out there, where we're going. And I'm very honored that this is the first partnership event between the University of New Hampshire and Rutgers. So kudos to that. And thank you to our alumni at JPMorgan Chase. Thank you for attending. We will be having similar programming like this in the future. Who knows? We may have a follow-up on this presentation, see where we go from here. I know I'm very interested in those next steps as well. So again, thank you on behalf of the Rutgers University Alumni Association and the Foundation, the Rutgers Business School. Eric, Shen, and Nag, thank you for your expertise. Until we meet again, keep cool and keep safe.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Thank you.